Hello, my name is Jeff. This is Castle Tutelage, your home defense network. I'm just going to be trying out some new tools here, and I hope it works out fairly well. Teaching tools, okay? This lady right here, 67-year-old Sherry McLean, she got into a little bit of trouble when she pulled her revolver on a guy at Walmart, and now she was arrested for felony aggravated assault with a weapon. Okay, she has a possibility of going to jail for 3 to 6 years because she doesn't understand the immediate. Okay, we've been talking a lot about proportionality. People do get into trouble with proportionality, but the next one that people get into trouble with is immediate death or great bodily harm. Okay, and that's exactly what her issue was. Now we're going to go through this news report for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll get into exactly what you need to know about protecting your your story, your narrative, making you look like the good guy and not a bad guy. Again, this is all about tools to give to you guys to tell your narrative.
A woman fears for her life and pulls a gun, but tonight she's the one facing serious criminal charges.
It is a controversial case raising questions about how far you can go if you think you are in mortal danger. In a News Channel 5 exclusive, our Nick Barris talked with the suspect and police about this unusual arrest.
What happened at this Walmart parking lot may just be a sign of the times. People are scared, many of them carry guns, and what happened in this case, a weapon was pulled out of genuine fear.
Scared me absolutely to death.
Sherry McLean was loading groceries into her car this past Saturday in the crowded Walmart parking lot on Old Fort Parkway in Murfreesboro. That's when a strange man approached, surprising her, and she pulled her revolver.
I have never been so afraid of anything in my whole life, I don't think.
So if McLean was acting in self-defense, why was she the one arrested? Here's her mugshot.
This guy is the bad guy, and I'm the one in handcuffs walking away.
There was no reason at the time for her to have perceived any legitimate threat.
Sergeant Kyle Evans says officers at the scene talked with McLean and the man who approached her. It turns out he had just bought cigarettes and asked her for a light. Witnesses confirmed this, and security video showed the man, who we could not reach for comment, never got closer than 10 feet to McLean. When she pulled the gun, he ran back into the store to call 911.
Certainly, pulling a gun on someone who just simply asks a question, who is not displaying a weapon or displaying any aggressive behavior, is not appropriate.
Clearly, this is just an example of a gun owner that doesn't need to own a gun.
Keely Benoit's 7-year-old son and his grandmother found themselves in McLean's crosshairs as the man ran past them.
And when she looked up, the gun was being pointed at the three of them, and the lady kept repeating, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to kill you.
Clearly something spooked McLean. For whatever reason, she felt the stranger was a threat, and she can't believe she was arrested for self-defense.
What are we supposed to do if we can't protect ourselves? I'm 67 years old.
McLean is facing some serious felony charges. Again, she says she feared for her life. A judge will now likely decide whether or not the situation fully justified her actions. Nick Barris, News Channel 5.
Okay, there you have it. A little bit of a story of a frightened 67-year-old woman who doesn't know how to really apply the law. First of all, if you read a lot of the comments of my teaching videos, there's going to be a lot of comments where if I'm a fear of my life or great bodily harm, all I have to do is a feeling and I can empty my magazine into the perpetrator and make sure that he is bleeding everywhere, blah, blah, blah. That is not true. We've talked about this several times. You cannot have that attitude, okay? There are two things when you're being a reasonable person, okay? Subjectively and also objectively reasonable, okay? What that person is saying is nowhere objectively reasonable, okay? It's just not in between your ears. It's not in between your gray matters. Other things still need to apply for reasonableness, okay? Now, we talked a little bit about this issue, okay? You listened to the story, and basically it was a guy who just bought cigarettes, went to her and asked her if she had a light, and she had this visceral reaction of fear, okay? It is not uncommon for people to go up to elderly people and ask them for their time or ask them for a light or whatever. That's the bad guy's chance to get close to them, to make contact with them, to rob them. Okay, but if that is in her head, she didn't express it. I am very. It's very interesting that her lawyer allowed her to do this interview, but it gives us a teachable moment. Her probably not getting good legal advice and to keeping her mouth shut at this point is not looking well for her. Okay, that is something else you need to look at. It's all about the narrative that you can build. It's all about expressing yourself exactly what is going on. We talk a lot about the AOJ triad, the ability, the opportunity, and jeopardy. That is a good narrative notebook, if you will, to get your narrative together. So when you are telling the police a little bit at the scene, okay, and we've talked about this. I'm just going to mention this. You cannot just say nothing, okay? You have to say, there's the perpetrator, there's the witnesses, there's the weapon, that kind of thing. You do not want a weapon walking away. You want the police to secure these things, these witnesses, to corroborate your narrative. Now, with that being said, you're not just going to start blabbing to them. You're just pointing out things. I'm the victim. I'm the complainant. I would like to, sign a complaint. Blah blah blah. Okay. So let's get back to the AOJ, the immediate. Was she in immediate fear of death or great bodily harm? Okay, it's not reasonable to just fear someone coming up at you and getting 10 feet from you and asking you a question. That on its face is not a reasonable fear of death or great bodily harm. Where was the immediate? Where was the immediate? I just want to get her face back up here. Where was her immediate fear? Now, when we're dealing with immediate, we're usually talking about does the person have the ability to cause death or great bodily harm now? Not sometime in the future, but the perfect example is they talk about the Tueller drill, okay? I'm going to be talking about the Tueller drill in the next month or two because there's some fascinating new way of looking at it that I want to convey to you. But the Tueller drill basically is that a bad guy can run 21 feet in a second and a half, and that's the average time it takes a police officer with a holster on the outside of his body to draw and fire a gun, okay? The Tueller drill is just a concept, but for you, you need to personalize it for you. If you have to dig through a purse and get out a gun, well, that's timing is going to be much greater, okay, for a contact weapon. So if a guy comes after you with a baseball bat and he's 100 yards away, are you in immediate fear of death or great bodily harm? No, you are not. Now, let's say that he is 10 feet from you. Are you in fear of death or great bodily harm? Well, there has to be other things. Just because you're at a Little League field, well, let's just not say it's a Little League field. A father is walking out of a Walmart store with a baseball bat because he had to buy a baseball bat for his son and is going to the Little League field. And he gets within 10 feet. Is he a threat of death or great bodily harm? No, because he has to show jeopardy. He has to be looking at you or verbally telling you that he's going to be killing you. So under that scenario, yes, but just walking through, no, he is not an immediate threat because jeopardy isn't there, okay? He may have the ability with the bat alone, but that's not it, okay? Now let's just say if you were at a Little League field and a coach got pissed off at you, and I tell you, man, parents in the stands, it's the worst thing ever. Back when I was a high school basketball referee in South Orange County, California, I've seen parents are just absolutely the worst. But let's just say that a person had a bat and he had the ability, the opportunity, and he was showing you jeopardy of knocking your block off, and he was in the 10 feet area. yeah, I think it would be appropriate to take out your gun and shoot him. Now, let's say he was 3 feet from you, but a backstop fence was there. Are you an immediate threat of death or great bodily harm? Well, no, you're not, because he has no really opportunity to cave your skull in at that point. Okay, you cannot just take out your gun and shoot him. Okay, that is some things of the law that you need to take a look at with this woman, Sherry McLean, 67 years old. Maybe not confident in her skills anymore, maybe getting a little bit of fearful because she's getting up in age, but she didn't have an immediate threat. Okay, just someone coming up to you, and you perceive them to have some kind of a weapon. The law doesn't recognize your perception. What may happen, okay? That is different if it's a furtive movement. He says, "I'm going to shoot you with my gun," and starts reaching for his back pocket, okay? You don't actually have to see the gun coming out of his back pocket to defend yourself with deadly force, okay? That is what we need to look at for the narrative. There's always going to be 2 competing narratives. Your narrative that you are the good guy, the prosecutor's narrative that you were the bad guy. Again, with this Sherry McLean, she did not have the verbal skills to articulate why was she immediately threatened for her life or great bodily harm on a here and now basis, where she pulled out her weapon, pointed at the guy, and said, "I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to kill you," according to the witness. I would like to say this, and this is one thing that really saved her cookies, is she didn't pull out and shoot. Okay? That is, she recognized at that point when he was backing off that he clearly wasn't threaten her anymore by him backing off. Now, I also want to say, and people get this wrong with the comments all the time, there are different aspects of a conflict, okay? The conflict has the ability of escalating in force, de-escalating in force, and also re-establishing innocence for the attacker. Now, people aren't going to be liking this when I talk about re-establishing innocence for an attacker, because people, "Oh, he wronged me. He looked at me funny. I just feel wronged, and I need to shoot him." A bad guy can actually regain his innocence, okay? And this is how it's done. Let's just say that a guy was yelling at you with a knife. He was 35 feet away, and you're aware of the Tueller drill. And he was coming up to you and says, "I'm going to rob you of your money and slit your throat, and I'm just going to do it." And he's still coming up to you. Just before he gets to that 21-foot draw, you drew your gun and you put it at the low ready, and he sees it. And then he starts backing off. He goes, "No. Oh, well, let me get this a little bit further." He gets into your 21-foot rule, okay? And you put it at the low ready. He sees your gun out, and he puts up his hands and says, "Oh no, I don't want anything to do. I'm sorry," and he starts backing up. That's regaining his innocence, okay? Bad guys do this all the time. And as soon as he starts backing up and says, "I don't want anything to do with this," and he may still have the knife in his hand, but now he's at the 25 mark and he's still backing up, saying, "Hey, man, I don't want anything to do this." Are you going to shoot him? You can't, because that is him regaining innocence. That's a different lesson, though. A little bit of a caveat, so I wanted to get through that. So again, your sole purpose about learning the law, learning the AOJ triad. The AOJ triad would help you give yourself the narrative of that you are the good guy. You are not the bad guy. That you are the victim. You want to sign a complaint, and you go from there. Part of this woman's problem was, yes, she was too in her head about what she truly feared, but she was totally disconnected on the immediate threat of death or great bodily harm. Okay, I find this to be absolutely fascinated